which brings me to this. Jeff was gone. You were gone.
That's right.
You were gone. I was here, but I was scaffolding, and you guys have now come and taken this church, to a whole awesome, different, powerful, better, stronger, more awesome level than I think it has ever been.
Wow.
You, Jason, and Jeff.
Hello. Welcome to Table Talk Podcast. We're continuing our conversation on growing up in church. I'm with the one and the only Jason Wilson and the one and the only Darren Penley.
Hi.
Say hello, guys.
Hi, guys.
Hi, guys.
Hey. So
Nice to see you
we've
again.
done a couple of these. We talked about kind of our stories and what it looked like growing up in church in the 70s and the 80s. So it's the logical next step is the 90s. So
Great music during the 90s.
Great music. Absolutely. Jason,
Yes.
where were you in the 90s?
I was 10 years old in 90. So I was running around church.
So you were in church, for sure.
In church, yes. So I don't know. I grew up in church, so that's all I knew. So
Right.
it
You're
was the
born.
most normal thing on the planet to sort of, be sitting with your friends, messing around in the middle of some super serious
Seminar.
life and death, heaven and hell situation.
Yeah.
And
Well.
you're just a little kid, having fun, messing around. So,
And Darren, so in the 80s, you went to Bible school with Jeff.
Yes, in 85 through 87.
So
we're
in the
at Rhema.
90s, that was like full blown in practice, or?
Right. When I left Rhema in 87, I came back to OBC to help out
Open Bible.
because, I was full of God's word. But then somehow, some way, it was probably another camp meeting time, some sort of annual revival going on here back then at Christ Life Sanctuary.
Right.
That I hooked up with Jeff again. But that was kind of a connection. But then I got involved somehow in the church of just in youth and young adults. But that was a little bit later in the 90s. But basically in the 90s is where I started to really find a home
Roots.
here from
Planted.
my early influences at OBC. And then meeting Jeff in high school. And then going to Rhema in 80, 85 and 86 and 87. Then coming back to OBC, leaving OBC, and coming to Christ Life in the 90s.
yeah.
Nice.
Darren was my youth pastor.
Yes, and we had, well, that's a great place
Okay.
right there. We can go there, but
Well,
we had amazing times.
So I was gone, and we'll get to that in a minute. I
Yes.
was like gone from church in the 90s. But one of my favorite stories about you being the youth pastor and Jason being in there is I want you guys just real quick to talk about this like 12-hour Lord of the Rings-a-thon.
Okay. 19,
Like,
I think
yeah,
it
Jason.
it was like 1999. That was like right at the end.
Okay, we're still there though.
This
Okay.
is the end of.
This was at the end of where I was almost at the end of being the youth pastor.
Yeah, I think Darren was.
Yeah, I was done.
He
It was
had-
12 years. This was 12 years.
Youth time had run its course.
12 years.
12 years
but,
as a youth
but
pastor.
for those listening or watching, the average youth pastor lifespan is 18 months.
So
It's true. So
well,
Darren, 12
man,
years.
we're going over so much right now.
Yeah,
But-
we'll have to skip. We went straight to the end of the 90s.
Right, that was like
I was
end
10
of-
years old.
I didn't know I was gone.
Now I'm 19 years old.
So we were. I took the kids in a 15 passenger van to Cincinnati to watch the Lord of the Rings marathon. Not just the last Return of the King marathon, Fellowship of the Ring, and Two Towers, and Return of the King, all in the same day. all in a row.
Extended edition.
The extended editions of each.
Oh man.
And we got I got a T-shirt. We just something for us to do, and it was a mind twister. And by the end, I didn't even want to see anymore. And I'm the rings freak. But
I literally had PTSD from,
no, we
from
couldn't
the
take another
visceral
battle.
overload. Just think it was IMAX too.
It
So
was
just
insane.
the action scenes for that
12
period
hours.
of time, it was like I couldn't watch movies for months afterwards.
It was like
without
11
my stomach.
11 hours, wasn't it? Like
It
9,
was
10,
insane. We
11
got there in the
hours
morning
straight.
and left late at night.
And
It really messed with my head.
That's what you said. I remember Jason telling me it's like almost like full blown hallucinations.
Oh yeah, it was
Like-
really bad.
Without a doubt.
It was bad.
All right, so I
Too much
skipped all the way to the end of the 90s.
So the beginning of the 90s was when we were in the youth kind of together. Jason, me, Justin.
The beginning of the 90s, were you still here? Or had you
Well,
left
yeah,
already?
so
Okay,
that
let's go there. Let's go to the
there.
beginning.
Perfect,
Beginning of the 90s.
because it's a great. I should have gone here a minute ago because you talked about how you'd gone 85, 86, 87 to Rhema. You and Jeff, pastor at Life Point Church, you were roommates. 2 out of 5 guys, right? Lived
5 guys in
tiny
one
little place,
right.
Rhema Bible College, Broken Arrow, Oklahoma.
Correct.
So when I was in high school, I played like in a punk rock band, like garage band called Sunken Giraffe, junior high and high school. But coming out of that, I had this awesome experience with Jesus, and I decided I wanted to follow in Jeff and Darren and Rodney's footsteps. And I was going to go to Rhema Bible College. So I graduated in 91. So I was right here at this church, Christ Life, at that time. But when it came time to graduate, instead of going to Rhema Bible College, I joined punk rock band, quit going to church entirely, and toured the world for like 5 years. So little bit of a different direction there.
And there's a whole video, ladies and gentlemen, that you can
Shameless plug.
shameless plug
Yeah,
for the Brainiac
the
video that you can get online.
Yeah, called Transmissions After Zero. So, yeah, I was in a
Transmissions
band called
After Zero.
Brainiac.
Right.
And at first, I just thought it was going to be something fun. It's kind of a side project to do. And my best buddy, Jeremy, had me try out for the band. And so I met the guys. But the second I heard the songs, I was like, this is something I've never heard before, just really special. And it just happened almost overnight. We just started traveling and touring and the DIY thing. And the 90s were wide open musically because
It was.
Nirvana and the whole Pacific Northwest grunge thing just cracked the whole universe wide open. You had the 80s, a little bit of that alternative stuff was going on, but it was still very much Madonna, Michael Jackson, pop, mainstream kind of stuff. And now all of a sudden, you've got this grunge music, and it made the record labels scramble. They were constantly, the entire 90s, I almost have a little empathy for them, having lived through it, like being courted by them and stuff, and the A&R people and stuff, labels. But I almost have this empathy because they were just, ever since Nirvana happened, they were always trying to find the next Nirvana.
Mm.
And it was like this endless pursuit that could never, ever happen.
Right.
It's just like a magic. Like something magical happened. It just shifted
Cultural
everything.
shift.
Yeah, it was a big cultural shift. I mean, I've heard people say that, Nirvana is why Bill Clinton was elected president. And there was a whole bunch of change happened just from that whole musical shift and the taste.
You
And
just got kind of caught with the wave.
yeah, absolutely. Not saying we weren't good, not saying we didn't work hard. We worked our butts off, traveled 9 months out of the year, but it was definitely like just riding this wave, got swept up. But definitely took me out of church. And I don't regret the experience at all. Brainiac
No.
was awesome. I've enjoyed reconnecting with all my old friends and doing this documentary and all that kind of stuff. But it was definitely was a detour of what was originally in my heart there at the turn of the 90s, and that was to be a minister, to go into ministry officially.
Well, I remember during those times, there's such a deep friendship between you and, like, you grew up here too with Jason, basically.
Mhm.
And my connection with Jeff automatically became my connection with everybody. And especially, I haven't even got around to Rachel yet, the
Right.
90s. So anyway, I remember you calling me from London one night.
I'm scared.
You were in London touring with the band, and you called me on the phone, and I said, Tyler, where are you?
It's probably like 4 in the morning for you.
Oh yeah, it was. It was some crazy time of night, and you were calling me, and I could tell you were, you've had a good time that night. And and by good time I mean
Inebriated.
correct. So and it was so strange. You're like, D, I was like, Tyler, like, man, I just want to tell you I love you, man. I love you, man. I was like, I love you, Tyler. Where are you at? Are you like, man, I kept telling you I was praying for you. We loved you. We loved you. All right, D. All right. That's the last thing I remember. And that was kind of like a snapshot of where Tyler's life, like where your life was at that time. You always had the connection to us, even when you were in London.
It's an interesting thing too, because I think for a lot of church kids, some church kids,
I was going there with church kid mentality.
Have such bad experiences that they leave and never come back, and it's just an awful, terrible thing, like a cut and dry sort of feeling towards the church, but not, everybody's experience is different, and I think from that story and from my own experience, it wasn't so simple. Like, we had gotten drawn out of church, but we still had a love for and a respect for the way we were raised and our experience and the people there we missed and loved them.
Yes.
And so it was a confusing.
It was confusing because mine was the opposite. Because I got a lot of friends that I still talk to this day, and I understand. I love to listen to them and hear their heart, where they just had this awful experience growing up with church and just some baggage and history there.
Right.
Mine was the opposite.
Right.
It was wonderful. I mean, just the best pastor and the best church.
And it was always the groundwork of how I would relate when you guys were doing your thing. I would always relate to you that way because I never saw it any other way.
This is an interesting point.
It never changed how I saw you.
Right.
You know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Because we're talking
Never.
about
You
church,
saw Spirit Tyler.
Right. I just saw
whatever.
you playing music and whatever.
Yeah. So I think we're talking about early 90s too. We had camp meetings, sort of. It was like a year, every year you had camp meeting in the summertime, and they literally had a tent. And but as time went on, they went away from the tent and just had it here in this room. And they seemed to get longer and longer. I don't know if they were always.
Were they actually longer, or they just?
No,
felt?
I think they did. It was sort of a trend. You were more spiritual the
2
longer
days, 4 days.
it went. So there were times where it was just we're not going to say when it ends. We're just going to keep the fire burning.
10 year.
But so what there was like a looseness there that we've talked about before, where like some crazy stuff would happen, but also it gave an opportunity, some really beautiful things could happen. And one of the things was with the music. There was always music happening. The music was
I love it.
like jamming, man, back in the day. I mean, there were times when the whole church would be on their feet dancing around the whole entire church, and those kinds of like experiences, on your emotions and your psyche and your spirit, they don't really go away.
Right.
And I remember even translating that into when I went on and played in a rock band. We were all church kids. And that was like our connection to like when it was really working well.
Yeah.
It was a similar feeling to what we had in church. That feeling of the spirit, whoa, something just that happened. We connected.
Flow.
Something just happened there. Whoa, what was that? But it's the same feeling you had in the church. So, and it's weird because you see like footage or something of that time. I don't think it's fair. It's very easy to make fun of those kinds of times. If you were actually there and felt what was happening, it's quite a different experience,
Yeah, well, it's also not a fair comparison because, I mean, you look at, anything in the 80s.
Yeah.
And it's
From
going to look like
clothes to hair
Gooftown.
to experience to
I mean?
music
Right,
to
and that's the
whatever.
other thing.
The
There was
church gets
definitely
unfairly judged.
a culture that had
There definitely was.
come. They're like suits, a lot of mauve.
A lot of burgundy, yeah. I
Yeah,
was
a
gonna
lot of
say,
mauve. Like
lot of-
this whole place was mauve
And it wasn't just this
carpet.
church. It was like every church.
Yeah, it was a lot of churches.
Yeah.
How these things
It was
kind
like
of
a
happen.
victorious
Yeah,
Christus Victor
Right.
robe.
yeah.
You
Those
know.
kind of trends never stop. It's gray right now. Obviously, you can
Yeah.
see this room is all gray. Gray's so hot. Gray's so hot
Monochromatic.
right now.
Yeah. Right now.
Which will in 10 years say, why did we paint
Why did we
everything
do that?
gray?
But I love that you said that too, like where we've kind of like we've been tethered together. And what's so cool about us sitting down today? We're all not 30 anymore. Won't divulge any ages, but we always reference this Phil Keaggy song called "Full Circle" because this is very fitting that throughout all these decades and all this time, we somehow keep being brought back together, and I just have to believe that's God.
Yeah.
Because like you said, I called you in London, but there were times too where Jason, I think you and your brother Jeff called
Yeah.
me once.
Yeah.
I was at a party, and a rough one at that, and I was like, for those that don't know my story, haven't heard my full, what I've been through. I just found myself just addicted to drugs and just a total mess. I remember Jason called me. It was like 11:30 at night. I don't know why you guys just decided to call me.
We both had I don't know, premonition, a spirit
Yeah,
thing.
I
We
think I
couldn't
needed it.
let it go. Like,
And I was a
what?
mess.
Why do we keep thinking about Tyler?
Yeah, and they called me, and I think I was waiting on a phone call from old boy to hook up with more drugs. So I was ready to answer the phone. I picked up, hello, hello, and it's Jeff and Jason, who I hadn't heard
Yeah.
from in decades because I was at the church for 15 years, and I was freaked out. I mean, I'm at this party, I'm a mess, and there's these voices from my church growing
The
up.
tethered voices.
These
that-
tethered voices saying, "Hey, just thinking about you. What's up?"
Yeah.
I don't know. Up to you.
Yeah, and I think that's crazy because you think
First step.
like I was talking about the culture and all that stuff, and some of it I like, some of it I don't. But that really wasn't the point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If those kinds of connections have lasted that long, there's obviously something more
Yeah, it's divine
happening at the
appointments.
church. You know.
Well, I made the connection when we were in the youth group as Jason was growing up. I always knew there was such a special group of kids in the group. Jason was like the vanguard of creativity even back then. And the music has been a connection between all of us. That's another thing. We went through the Vineyard phase. We went through the Hosanna music phase. Then Shout to the Lord came up, and then Hillsong went crazy. And we had these long camp meeting type things through the 90s. And I remember there was a guy named Bill Morris that would come here, and we had like a baptismal revival. It went for like 2 months straight, every night. Every
Wow.
night, people be baptized here. Oh, I mean, just things like that leave indelible impressions. And I always say, eat the hay and spit out the sticks, because there's so much going on. There was the laughter revival, and there was the Word of God, the Order of God revival, and the fivefold ministry emphasis, and everything that was going on in the charismatic movement. And I remember just absorbing it all,
Yeah.
and those other tethers. That's another thing for me. From the 90s for me was my most productive spiritual working. When I worked the most with Rodney, when Rodney and I would be working hard, and just being a part of the move, what we would call a move of God at Christ Life, that made this church one of the premier voices of the charismatic movement in the city, headed by Dr. Wilson. And it was a privilege for me to even have any kind of part in it whatsoever, let alone for 12 years.
That's awesome.
And just in the youth. That's not counting 10 years in the kids, and then being the janitor before that
Right.
with Mike Davelt.
Hmm.
And being a part of all
That's
this,
awesome.
all the stuff we did with Joshua House,
Hmm.
and all the things that school we established, Christian Life School of Theology was here.
So Joshua House, that was we tried to do a Christian music coffee house venue at one point,
Yeah.
and I don't think we got too far, but we did have a couple shows.
Yes.
Who was the first show there?
Jars of Clay.
Jars of Clay. Yeah.
That we talked about that in our last
Oh, did you?
podcast.
Okay.
That was when Jeff went to Boston. We
Yeah,
did
you
it
were
for a
right
while.
there.
Then Jeff went to Boston, and he was gone for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's when Rodney and I were here, and it was just. And then 1997, in the heyday of me working here, I met my wife.
I was getting ready
And
to
I
say.
have to get this in
Speaking
before
of
we go.
tethers, we got yeah. It's like
The biggest tether of my life was the great honor of meeting my brother's sister, and her even giving me a chance after all I can describe is a fevered attempt to get her to even look my way was an amazing accomplishment, because and for you guys to allow me to come into your world in an even more deeper way is the greatest honor of my life. Is being a part of
you say her name yet? Rachel.
Rachel's.
Yep.
Marrying Rachel in 1997 was a demarcation of
That was
how my
BCAD.
I thought my life had totally transformed up to
In this
the
room,
90s.
right?
It was right here in this room up on that stage.
Yes, with the burgundy and the
Burgundy, and with
Burgundy
Braveheart playing over the
nice.
loudspeakers.
And were there like 1,700 steps in here too?
There's lots of
Yes.
steps.
Yeah.
And
You went
three
up to the
pastors.
Went up the mountain to be married.
3 pastors I brought in. I put them
Oh,
in
that's the
robes. I did the
best.
whole thing, dude.
Was Grimes part of that?
Pastor Grimes.
Oh, that's
yeah,
so
of
cool,
course.
man.
See, all these dudes, all these good men and women of God are always there. And we, you have the inner circle, obviously, of, you guys. But, and then Rachel gave me 2 amazing daughters
Yeah, that's awesome.
that are now grown.
Crazy.
20.
You've got one
18
right
years
now
old.
who's having to navigate this bizarre graduation during a pandemic.
Yeah, pandemic
stuff.
graduation, Ava and Olivia and Rachel. Now that has changed as much as the 1979 through 1997 changed me. 97 to 2020
A whole other lifetime.
has been the absolute best part of
And-
me being a believer.
And then coming out of the 90s too, as part of your youth group, you were talking about how Jason was like a vanguard of creativity.
He
I
was.
just have that's a great phrase. I'm stealing that.
All right, great.
Vanguard of creativity.
Yes, I'm going to steal that and describe myself that way.
Yeah.
When I,
He was.
He's gonna
when I'm introduced.
I relied
legally
on
change his name.
I
to
relied on
Vanguard.
Jason and Justin, my nephew, and Crystal.
Mhm.
Crystal,
Well,
they were all in the
Some of
youth group,
oh,
and she
man,
went
dude.
on to Real Art Studio. She's a nationally recognized graphic designer today,
Yeah.
But
nationally
here's the
So
known.
thing,
cool.
though. You're talking about being raised in church. So as a kid, like I said, it was all I knew. So it was the best. It was
Yeah.
the best, though.
It's all you do.
All my
It's-
friends
yeah.
were there. I got to hang out with them.
That's
and then
how I felt.
we grew up and went to youth group together. It was the place to be.
You had to
Right,
run the
that's where you
land
went.
here.
It
you
was.
know?
I mean, I wish I could say it was just a great spiritual education, which it was. But there was also just a really, you got to hang out with your
Yeah.
friends.
Well, it was a
So-
camaraderie. I had more. They affected me more. Jason and Justin and all these guys. We would do this thing called Fun House at my house.
Oh man,
Just hang out day in the summertime. We would live with each other.
yeah,
Yeah.
Just live with each
Literally communing
yeah.
other. It was crazy, man.
like family.
Yeah.
Well, and then, so I was in a band in the 90s, got to travel and experience some success. And out of that youth group, you ended up being in a band
I did.
as well.
Yeah, and another guy in the band was also at one point in the youth group as well. So,
Yeah. He was like a worship leader, right?
Yeah. yeah.
Nick.
So we were,
Buddy Nick.
yeah, the band name is Mona. It's still going. Nick's still going, talented guy out there,
Yeah.
plugging away at it. And I just saw him. He's, talking about COVID. That all they can do is online shows right now. So
And what's so crazy about that, in full circle, talking about being tethered together with all these relationships and divine appointments and everything, is so I, with my tail tucked between my legs, I came back to church, which was yet another phone call to you, Darren,
Yes.
just pleading for my life. What do I do? So you send out this heartfelt invitation like only you could. I come back here in 2007, Palm Sunday. My whole life gets flipped upside down in the best kind of way. Come back to the church, come back to Jesus, and just this transformation starts happening from the inside out. But one of the first things I hear about is Jason's in this band. And so I get to go see him at Canal Street Tavern. Place is like disgustingly packed. Like
I was
you
there
can't
with you, bro.
move.
Couldn't move.
Just this electricity.
Date
And
band
I mean,
playoffs.
everyone there, there are bands that are popular,
Right.
and they were really, really good, first of all.
Yeah.
But there are bands that are popular and have a following, but it was like something more than that.
Yes.
Like everyone there, they were there.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
We were there for We were there for them.
So when I walked in, it was like this thing you could feel.
Yes.
Just this intensity, and they were so good, and it was just so weird to just get another weird kind of parallel. Of
Just another connection and another
these connections and.
Well, yeah, we were talking about that because we both in our band experience at one point when we were being courted to be signed, got to play for Rick Rubin. You got to hang out with him. We did a show. I forget where, Viper Room maybe or something, but it was just him. It was just him.
Just played for Rick Rubin.
Yes, it was just him. So we had to get up and play our set for just him. I think it was like a girl and he was dating and his friend or something.
Oh man!
So they were there and talking about church and craziness. But I remember it's a foggy period in my life too. But drunkenly going up to him and I made sure that I wanted him to know of our spiritual roots.
Nice.
His ways were like, yeah, I can tell you're so spiritual.
Well, and for those listening that may not know what a big deal that was, he said that was in the Viper Room. That's a club in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah.
Club in Los Angeles that's owned by Johnny Depp. And if you don't know who Rick Rubin is,
Maybe it wasn't Viper Room. Maybe
he is
somewhere there.
one of the most famous, infamous, incredible musical minds, producers, geniuses of all time. He discovered the Beastie Boys, LL Cool J. He was part of the Johnny Cash resurgence, Black Crowes, Chili Peppers, just on and on and on and on. And so that was another weird parallel. Like Jason got to meet him and drunkenly tell him that. What was cool about him, the band I was in, Brainiac, we spent a whole week in Los Angeles where they told us it was the first time it ever had been done, where 4 or 5 major record labels split the bill to host us for the week and give us their individual pitches. So this is like 1996, I think, around there. And so Capitol Records took us, we had dinner with Mike D from the Beastie Boys at his restaurant. Earlier that lunch, we went and had lunch with Flea from the Chili Peppers and his dog. And just like all this wine-in and dine-in and just kind of wow factor. And I won't even tell you like the craziness like they would offer and this decadence. The Interscope
That was
Records.
probably what, the height of the record business?
It was the height of their bad behavior, why they no longer exist.
Right before
because
it collapsed.
They were just throwing money around hand over fist. But all these labels, one by one, were just like really trying to impress us with star power and all this kind of stuff. And when it came for Rick Rubin's turn, he wanted to sign us to his label, American Records. And he did the exact opposite. He came to our hotel and picked us up in his Bentley himself and drove us to his Hollywood Hills mansion and cooked us dinner. So it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. We were at this gigantic, like 14-person dinner table. There's like this 12-foot tall polar bear hovering over me. And we pretty much just talked about UFOs all night long. Yeah. Just UFOs and aliens. And then he just said, I'd love for you to be in our label.
There you go.
And that was that. And our band
So,
tragically came to an end.
so when
recently
you
after.
ended up leaving church till you came back, how long was that?
It was almost 15 years on the
15
button.
years? Okay. That's
15
about
years.
that for me.
92 to 2007. And it was the strangest thing because, like we said, like I had a great experience. I had a great church. I had
Right.
great pastors. I had a great church family. And I didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm doing this instead.
Yeah.
Just a couple little decisions here and there. And the Brainiac part, the band part, that was awesome. But along the way, I made some really bad personal decisions. Like epic. We're talking like,
Well,
when I do things, I do it right. I go all out.
Extended
and so,
edition.
extended director's cut of
It
the
was so
prodigal
weird.
son.
and it's so weird though. I tell you the truth, like I've said this before earlier, that when I would see you though, it would be like you didn't do any of those things.
Right. You're
I
like
was like, oh, Tyler.
you're the
It's 15 years later. Hey, man.
you're the parent that's what do you call that? They're just deflecting or
Yeah.
ignoring
Yeah, I
or
was
whatever.
totally like,
Look over there.
Jason, he'd come in and he's done and he wants to do this, you're back.
I remember D. One of the things that meant so much to me because when I came back to the church, I wasn't just like a spiritual mess. I was also a physical mess. I was almost 350 pounds, and I was so embarrassed. I mean, it was just something that it dominated my every thought. What are people going to think? And so I had to show up to this church. Not only that I took off for 15 years, but I missed your wedding. I missed the tragedy that happened with Jeff and his first wife. Always felt bad about that. I missed all these really important life events. But on top of that, I had to show up like a beached whale, to church. I'm just being honest. But I remember like the second or third Sunday, I just kept coming back. I couldn't get enough. I kept coming back. And I remember Darren came up to me and he said, "Man, I gotta tell you, there's just a glow about you." I don't know if you remember this.
Man.
You said, "There's just something about you. You're like glowing. You're completely aglow." And that meant so much to me because I was still 340 pounds.
Well,
But you saw, the reason I even bring that up is you said you just saw us as we were.
I
that make
just never thought it would be any other way.
Yeah.
It would never end up any other way because, being with Rodney, being with you, being with Jason, with Jeff, with Pastor, I would be like, in my mind, I was like, there is no way you can dismantle that for any longer term than is totally necessary here.
Right.
Because it's bound to be. I think Jason said this one time. He said, it's just in the cards. It's just what we've been dealt. It's not, you're going to have to play the cards that were dealt to you, and we're not going to let you do any other thing than that.
That's funny you say that because I've heard people talk about that, like the way being raised in church impresses upon you. Even if you reject it all, you're rejecting something. That's part of your identity. Is
it's
like
still
you
part
can't
of you.
get it away from it. It's stuck with you no matter what.
And that's a great perspective.
Even
that you guys
rejecting it, you are the rejecting person. It's still there. You know what I mean?
But you retain. I always sensed that both of you retained it, no matter where you ended up. No matter when I would go to Canal Street to watch him, or go to Canal Street to watch you, I'm just, oh man, I just had a vision in my head. It was almost like a parallel vision. Like, man, this is really going to work out awesome when they come back to church here. This is going to be amazing. Like,
You're totally optimistic.
I'm serious. Yeah. I was totally like naive. Like, say, oh, they're just hanging out doing their thing. I mean, we'll get back to doing this pretty soon.
Well, you know what? And
we come crawling back in.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, let's go.
And it really is a slippery slope because I mean, first and foremost, I would never want anyone to have to go through what I went through. Like, not in a million years.
Yeah,
it was
destructive.
Yes. I should be dead many times over. It's by the grace of God that I'm even alive. And I wouldn't recommend that or want that for anybody. But having said that, it's just that experience that I went through, one, helps me to relate to people that I wouldn't been able to relate to without that and share Jesus. But also, for me, I cannot deny the existence of God
Amen.
and His grace, because I've just having been face down in the gutter, I just can't deny it.
And then the
It's
end, I think
almost
that's
it's a
it.
weird luxury in a bizarre way. I wouldn't want anyone to go through it, but just having been through it, I just know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's hey, who's that?
All right, we
Hey.
got visitors.
Got a friend here.
Well, I always saw myself one thing. I know we got to wrap up, but one thing I always saw myself as, I've been here the whole time, only because I'm a chicken to do the stuff that you guys did. I'm chicken. I was afraid of it. I just never did. But anyway, I saw myself. I remember some dude came here and said, he looked at me. This was in the prophecy time. You know, when people used to give you words.
Yeah, give you words.
Give you words.
Just for you.
He goes, you're scaffolding to this place. Stuff is going to be built behind you. I was like, cool. I've always felt that way about myself.
That's awesome.
Which brings me to this. Jeff was gone. You were gone.
That's right.
You were gone. I was here, but I was scaffolding, and you guys have now come and taken this church, to a whole awesome, different, powerful, better, stronger, more awesome level than I think it has ever been.
Wow.
You, Jason, and Jeff have become another beacon to the people of our church. We love you guys. We appreciate what you're doing. And I've been at the post office now for 15 years. This is my 15th
Wow.
year.
We gotta get we need a numerology expert in here.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I've been away. Now, after the youth group, I was like, man, I'm just
Yeah.
going to go.
Yeah.
I'm
You're
gonna
here.
I'm gonna get me a regular job.
For the love of all
For
things.
the love of God, so I got me a regular job for 15 years now.
That's been 15 years.
Yeah, it's been 15 years.
Uh-oh.
Wow.
And I can't tell you how fast it has gone, and how I'm literally enjoying myself watching you guys. It's really cool to see what
Wow.
God has done through and in this staff, watching it from outside now. I was inside for 25 years, but watching it from the outside now, it's better now. It's better, stronger, faster, sleeker, more creative. You got this knucklehead back here running the show. We got
Ian
Ian
behind the computer.
We got the band is a bazillion times better.
We got
Everything,
so
man.
many
I'm telling
amazing
you, I'm
people.
just not
No, I get it.
But please understand, we appreciate everything you guys have done over the last decade. Jeff being here brings a whole new dynamic, and you guys are perfect together. Perfect. Now, only reason, now me on the outside looking in now is like, D, why don't you do more? Why don't you do this? I'm like, I can't have Jeff bossing me around, man. It's just not going to happen.
That's
It's just not
That's a
going-
once in
We
a
know each other
lifetime.
too well.
It's a deal breaker, man. I'm
No.
like, D, can you no, man, shut up. So you guys
Yeah,
can't say
brother-in-law.
I'm just, but it's
That's
been,
that's another podcast.
yeah, it's a whole
That's
other
a-
podcast
that's
that
a whole
Jeff and I
other
will have to
series.
do. Jeff and I will have to do that podcast. But thanks to Ian. Thank you, man. We love Ian, what God's doing through him. Love this church. Love the staff. It's awesome.
All
Well,
right.
that's pretty full circle.
I like ending on how awesome we are.
Yes. Anything that's about me is a good, fitting ending.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in with us. We'll be back again.
Thanks for
Something
the
else.
opportunity, guys. I appreciate you guys. Love you.
Adios.
Later.